Hey there, it's Happy Hour Friday, and welcome back, Bears fans, to another episode of the CHGO Bears podcast presented by PointsBet. Use promo code CHGO when you sign up to get two risk-free bets up to $2,000. And what is up, everyone? I am so excited to be here. I'm your host today, Will DeWitt, and I just want to thank you for joining us as we continue counting down to Bears camp. Nick is here. Happy Friday, sir. What is the drink of choice here on this Happy Hour Friday?
Yeah, so I'm taking the drink that they gave us after the Big Ten 10K, a Bell's Lighthearted Ale. I saved it for this specific moment, Will. We'll crack it open, get the nice sound in there. Hopefully it doesn't fizz up or anything. That would be terrible. Hey, solid, solid. But yeah, this is one I've definitely had before, but after the 10K, Will, it's like just a weird thing. You have brats and beer after running and sweating. I guess you could do it, but it just wasn't for me.
I understand. I feel like if I just ran multiple miles, I would want water in my body. I feel like I would
Yeah.
turn into a raisin if I had beer. It would just like dehydrate me. Like maybe I'd turn into like some Will jerky or something of that nature. But I've had that beer. It's really good. I enjoy it a lot. I'm just doing water. The baby got sick a few days ago. My wife fell into it, and now I'm starting to feel kind of those
Oh,
achies. Yeah, so we're gonna just stick with water, stay hydrated, and hopefully it doesn't really deteriorate from here. But I'm excited. We have a lot to get to again here today. Just like yesterday, I had a lot of fun breaking down the Bears secondary with you. Today, we're going to focus on the Bears linebackers. But Nick, before we get into that main, meat and potatoes of today's show, I have two intro topics that I wanted to kind of discuss, and I'm going to leave it up to you. Do we want to start with the positive or the negative?
ooh, let's start with the negative. Where are we going here, Will?
All right, so I'm going to go with Keyshawn Johnson because I saw a
Mm.
clip over on ESPN where he said that the Bears roster, like this roster sucks, and you know what? That's been the national narrative, and I get that, and that did not bother me. But as I'm watching this thing, the man said, and I quote, that they only have two or three players on this team that can start on another roster, like on another team. Like, no way. Like, are you kidding me? Only two or three players on this entire Bears roster can start somewhere else. I thought that was bogus. And I just wanted to at least bring it up here to kind of nip that in the bud. Because yet again, I think that's the national narrative taking it a little too far, rubbing some salt in the wounds here. And I think everyone agrees we don't have the best roster in the league. We know that this is a work in progress, but by no means are there only two or three players in this entire roster that can start another team. Darnell Mooney can start another team. Roquan Smith, Justin Fields can. David Montgomery. The list can go on. Like there are starters on this team. Let's not act like there's just a whole team of backups here, like the replacements going out here and playing Chicago Bears football. That's not the case.
No, it's not. Well, and look, we're July 15th, right? There's been nothing really done from the end of the off season where actually moves are happening till now. So I don't know, to go to that far to say something like that, it's like we just need training camp and actual games to be played because again, there's nothing to talk about. And now the Bears barely have any reliable players that can be on other teams and start for them. But hey, it is what it is. Once games start to get played, we see how this team actually shapes up. Then hopefully that narrative will change, and we'll see some players actually make plays and step up and prove that hey, there are some young quality players on the Bears football team.
Okay, so real quickly, this was not planned. I think this would be a really fun, quick, and I mean really quick exercise. I'm going to say a name. You just say yes or no in terms of could they start on another team in this league, just to prove how quickly you can get past two or three. You down for this?
Let's go.
All right. Can Byron Pringle start? And starting wide receiver would be like the top three, I would assume.
Yeah, as a number three, sure can. Yes.
So Darnell Mooney could as well, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Cody Whitehair,
There are some teams that can use a left guard, and Cody Whitehair can start for you.
Lucas Patrick? Question mark.
Yeah, I think there are teams that have a worse situation at center than the Bears do, but yes,
Cole Kmet, Justin Fields, David Montgomery,
all yeses.
Travis Gibson,
He can. I think he can too as well.
Justin Jones, Robert Quinn, Nicholas Morrow, Roquan Smith, Jalen Johnson, Jaquan Brisker, Eddie Jackson, Kyler Gordon. Like, come on. Like,
There's a lot of guys.
geez.
I mean, and it's not like okay, starters or high level start. They could be a bottom end. Like they're still you can find guys and all those people that you mentioned if you look at another roster, like, yep, he would probably be the best one. Maybe again, low end, but still, it doesn't fit exactly what Keyshawn was saying.
Blew my mind. And I just wanted to, again, draw attention to this. And just because we did it with Louis Riddick like a month ago, around very similar. But when he took it to that step, like I wasn't even going to mention this. And then when I heard that specifically, I was like, nope, that's getting
Nope.
added. It has to be mentioned here on this show because I wanted to take this time to focus on a really strong positive, and that's the Darnell Mooney story from Dan Pompei of The Athletic. Such a tremendous story. If you haven't caught it yet, please, and I mean please, give it a read. It'll tell you everything you need to know about Darnell Mooney, the person, the man behind the player, and really the player that he is wanting to become. And I know I told you I read it and you were like, oh, let me give this a look. And I put some strong words in there about how awesome it was in our chat. What did you take away from it? Obviously, perhaps mine is just his work ethic. I'll get into some of those details, but what were like your just biggest impression like after reading that? Like I was glued to the screen just going through that thing. And I read it a few times because it's a tremendous piece overall by Dan. And I just wanted to give him props for it. But overall, like what I learned about Darnell Mooney, even though he was one of my favorite players in this team, I think it just takes it to another level.
I think you get a better understanding of Darnell Mooney. Like, I did not know like how young he was when he lost his dad, and how that helped fuel him, and what he still had to go through in the aftermath of all of that. So you get a better understanding of him there, but and just how he's driven, being somebody that hasn't gone out and bought any luxurious kind of thing, still driving the 2016 Dodge Challenger that he had in high school, says a lot about him. And anything, and well, I'm glad you brought it up because it was on the docket to read later. Anything that Dan Pompei writes, you should read at some point because he's
Mm-hmm.
that fantastic. Um, but even like in the writing aspect of it, how he kind of learned it like it was like geometry or math or whatever. He kind of put lines throughout it, like he's understanding it, and towards the end of it, he kind of full circle. That's what a good writer does. But you just get such a better indication of how tough Darnell Mooney is, playing the 968 snaps, I believe. Only five other wide receivers were on the field more than him. So Darnell Mooney, the Bears are so fortunate to have a guy like that. And you know he has a chip on his shoulder, being a fifth round draft pick. But I'll let you share what you thought about it. But I'm glad we're talking about it because if you haven't read it yet, just, you can even take a little break from this podcast and go read it and come back here because it is that damn good.
Yeah, seriously, I would not be offended if you hit the pause. Like, all right, guys, you sold me. Let me read it and I'll come back. Like, you're not going to hurt my feelings really at all. You mentioned the game. He's like slowing down for him a bit. It took a few years until it happened in college. And he said that this is the offseason where he feels like it's happening yet again. Like, he's seeing the geometry of his routes. He
Mm-hmm.
sees the football field kind of like a grid, and he understands like leverage and angles and to a higher degree. The ball's coming very slow to him right now. Like things are at a really good point. Nick, have you ever seen The Matrix?
I've seen it like once, and that's about it. I'm not someone that's rewatched it.
So it reminded me of Neo, like at the end of the first Matrix, when he finally understands who he is as like the one, and he just sees like all the code of the Matrix, and he can just do whatever he wants now from that point
Mm-hmm.
on. Like he's in God mode because he just understands the reality in which he's in, and he can see it now. And that's what it felt like reading like Darnell Mooney. Like, oh yeah, like I can see things and everything's moving slow because that's what happened. Like they're in the fight, and he's just like, nope, 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 nope. Like it's just happening ultra slow to him. So maybe Neo will be a name. I'll keep to myself because it doesn't make much sense. Unless you like my reference here, but no, like with Darnell Mooney, like we already known he had a high work ethic coming out of college. We heard about the jug machine and like, oh, that's so cool. Like he bought one of them. And I like that he also bought one for the high school that he played at. So when he goes down there to visit, he also has a jugs machine that he can use over there and the kids get to use it. So it's great to give back to the community that he came from. You mentioned that he played in all of those snaps and he wants to, like, he doesn't want to get off the field. Like, they're like, hey, come on out, take a breather. He's like, nope, I'm staying on the field. I want to be out here. And that's why this offseason in the article, they outlined some of that, I'm going to say, insane cardio work to kind of combat that in-game fatigue, running multiple miles, sprinting more than 2 miles straight. Can you do that, Nick?
I probably wouldn't be here. I'd be somewhere in a hospital breathing, trying to breathe. But yeah, that's Darnell Mooney though.
And then in terms of like the mental stuff, when
Hmm.
they're not like in receiver meetings and the quarterbacks are meeting, like he can typically like just hang out, chill, relax. But he's like, no, no, no. I mean, I want to be in the quarterback meeting because I want to speak the same language as Justin. I want to understand the game through their lens, their perspective, so I can be better for my quarterback. It's just the work ethic in terms of what he does for his body and his mind. It's top level stuff. And it really blew me away. And in terms of like where he wants to go. I can't believe he used the Aaron Donald as like an impression, like as like a person he's like wanting to model himself after. Obviously, two different positions, but when people talk about Aaron Donald, like like who he is in terms of like the dominance that he brings to the defensive line spot in this league. And Darnell wants to be the same exact type of player, but at receiver. And I love that he holds himself to that standard and believes in himself to that degree that he expects himself to reach that that sphere of players in this league.
The thing is too, Will, like he talked about the physicality that he wants to also be recognized for, and he's not the biggest guy, right? One of his coaches was saying for recruiting trips, like, hey, you should wear, two sets of sweatpants and two hoodies to make yourself look thicker. It's like he's not the biggest guy, but yet he's not afraid to put his body on the line to make that extra block to be recognized in the same sphere as Aaron Donald, like you were saying, but as a physical wide receiver as well. Yes, he doesn't have the actual physical attributes in terms of size and weight, but he could still pack a punch when in terms of blocking and just being that kind of receiver. So everything that you know about Darnell Mooney already, maybe on the surface level part, this article just takes it way more in depth. So, like I said earlier, check it out on the Athletic. Dan Pompey. You will not. It'll be well worth your time. I'll say that.
100%. One more note, and you just mentioned the run blocking. I loved when he was mentioning, like, yeah, like everyone's telling me just get down, like, don't take this extra, all these extra hits. He's like, you don't worry about me, like, you worry about yourself, and you stick on your block, so I can make some plays happen. Like, I like that attitude. I like that, and we've seen it on in games and film. Like, he just won't go down. He's not someone that's going to go down easy on first contact, and yeah, and I know the Bears have brought in all these that are better blockers as well on the perimeter receiver. So watch out if Darnell Mooney gets some extra space with his mindset right now. Like he can really continue his ascension. And after reading it, like I just believe it's going to happen. How about you?
Yeah, it's hard not to. And obviously it's we have to see it once it comes unfolds this season. But when he's in, the Walter Payton Center at midnight, just working on his releases and doing stuff like that, and again, just trying to envision what he can do on a football field, he's got the work ethic. Now, hopefully, this offense and this offensive line can give him time to do the things that he thinks he's capable of doing. So hopefully that all comes to fruition. We can see that in 2022.
Man, I just want to have like a Darnell Mooney appreciation episode now after reading that article, getting to talk about him a little bit with you to start off this show. I'm just giddy about his potential still, and it's only year three, and we've already been impressed, and I expect to continue to be impressed along the way. But that's all I have on the top of the show. Is there any other final small Bears topics that maybe went under my radar before we get into linebacker preview?
You know what? Let's answer Jordan's question here. He asked us, just
Ooh.
curious, what's a ceiling you see for Mooney? Is he capable of being a true wide receiver one? And it's like, I guess there's how you define being a wide receiver one, being the go-to guy, the reliable guy. Even last season, like there were a couple drops that he had. I think he had four in the season, so not a large number, but they happened on some third down opportunities. But I think when you look at Darnell Mooney, what he's capable of doing, he could do everything that you would want out of a number one wide receiver. He can run all the routes. He's capable of blocking. He knows what to do on screens in terms of getting the yards after the catch. He is becoming more and more of a complete wide receiver. And the absence really of Allen Robinson last season, it helped him to grow in a broken offense. So to answer your question, Jordan, I think he can be. And I know maybe earlier this offseason there was major questions I had, like you're not going to replace Allen Robinson and ask Darnell Moon to be number one. The more and more I rewatch some of the games, you kind of read about what he's about and see what he's capable of. I think the answer is yes. He's definitely he definitely could be the number one wide receiver on this Bears roster. But going back to Keyshawn Johnson, if he could be a starter somewhere else, I think he can be. I think he is capable of doing that, and we're really going to see what he's about this season.
Yeah, I agree that he can be a wide receiver one. You don't need to be 6'2", big, thick, physical receiver to be a team's top receiver. I mean, look at the Rams, Cooper Kupp, the Raiders, Hunter Renfrow. Like, you don't have to be that prototypical build that people envision when they hear the term wide receiver one. With Mooney and his versatility to play inside and outside, being in a non-broken offense, hopefully, like, things should only get better for him. And the connection that he's building with Justin off of the field, if that translates to game days, then there's no reason why he can't be Justin's wide receiver one in Chicago for years to come. I love the question. Thank you so much for asking. And you know what? Since we're already at this point of the show, Nick, I feel like before we even get into the linebacker preview and kind of this talk about, we all know who to start things off, I just want to let people know that the best way that they can support CHGO is to download the PointsBet app and use that code CHGO when you sign up. And if you do that right now, you'll get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. But that's not it. If you make a $50 or more first-time deposit, you'll receive a free CHGO membership, which unlocks all of our web content, and you'll even get a free shirt of your choice from the CHGO locker, including that sweet brand new Skyline shirt that you see on your screen right now. That's $2,000 in free bets, a free CHGO membership, and a free t-shirt from the CHGO locker, all for making more than a $50 first-time deposit at PointsBet. And if you have any questions, please email pointsbet@allchgo.com, and we'll be more than happy to help you out. Your home for live in-play betting just got even better. See an edge in the game you are watching? Is your favorite team primed for a comeback? Don't just watch the game, bet along with it live. More live betting, more live markets, and faster live cash outs. Follow along with your bets the moment they hit and stay in the live action all game long. So download the PointsBet app right now and use that promo code CHGO. And I just want to know, what are you waiting for? It's time to elevate your live betting game. Once the game starts, don't just bet, live your bet life with PointsBet. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER for crisis counseling and referral services.
All right, Chicago sports fans, your home for the best Chicago sports coverage is partnering with a leader in sports merchandise and collectibles. CHGO has teamed up with FOCO to secure your access to the best collectibles and gear around, whether it's the Bears, Cubs, White Sox, Blackhawks, or Bulls. And I know it's a little tough right now with Chicago sports. You're like, do I need any of these collectibles? Well, from FOCO, you really do. They'll have something for everybody, for you, your kid, a friend, a loved one. They got it all for everybody. And if you're looking to get some new gear, collectibles, or accessories, FOCO has officially licensed gear for men, women, kids, from everything. And we talked about this. Bobbleheads. So I have a couple of Marvel bobbleheads above me, but you can get sports ones and swimsuits. It's still summertime here in Chicago. And again, if you like Crocs, if you're a Crocs person, you can get those there too. And FOCO has you covered with the best Chicago merchandise of your favorite team. And what you can do is you can head over to FOCO.com or click the link below in the YouTube description. And for all non-presale items, use the promo code CHGO to get 10% off.
Crocs and Stash, Nick. Crocs and Stash at camp.
I got the answer from Stephanie. She's like, hell no. You better not rock a Crocs and Stash at training camp or, bad things will happen. I'm like, all right, okay. We're
Did
not
you
going to
ruin
rock
her
that look.
birthday by even bringing it up?
No, it wasn't ruined, but it was like, oh, now she had to think about it. Like, Nick, are you really going to do that? I'm like, I don't think so. Maybe the Stash, just not the Crocs.
All right. You're listening to the CHGO Bears podcast. I'm Will DeWitt, joined by my good pal, Nicholas Moreano. We discussed some interesting news coming from ESPN. Whatever. They can say what they want. But we did also get in some good conversation with Darnell Mooney. I really enjoyed that one. And now it's time to get into what the show's all about, and that's the Chicago Bears season preview at linebacker. And as you know, I like to tier off these players. So let's start with tier one, in which I'm calling Roquan Smith. If he's not going to get the national recognition, whether it be a Pro Bowl, an All-Pro honors, or just being recognized on some of these lists that people are putting out there, then I'm going to do him some, service here, and he's deserving of his own tier. And really, when you look at the rest of the linebackers and like their capabilities, it's Roquan, Nicholas Morrow, and then it kind of goes down pretty drastically from there. And there's a pretty decent gap between Smith and Nicholas as well. But let's start off with Roquan. Mr. Underrated, overlooked himself. Roquan Smith had himself another stellar year for the Bears last season. He finished top 10 in tackles among linebackers with 111. That was eighth in the NFL. He led all linebackers in stops, according to PFF. He had 67 of those last year. For anyone, what the heck does a stop mean? According to PFF, that means the player made a tackle that constitutes as a failure for the offense. I think leading that category is quite impressive. So, Nick, we've been covering Roquan for years now. We know what we have in him. He's a sure tackler that really does it all. Excellent in coverage. He can crash down, make plays near, at, and behind the line of scrimmage, and he has superior range on the field. I just want to know, honestly, because we know who he is as a player, but do you believe that the Bears' new defensive scheme can actually make Roquan, dare I say, better?
I think you look at the success of a guy like Darius Leonard and you project it to a Roquan Smith, and the answer would be yes, given that he's going to be around the football. A lot like he was in the other defenses, but now going to year 5, a contract year for Roquan Smith. I think there is still a lot of potential for him to replicate those numbers, but even be better maybe in that turnover category. But the thing is, what will translate over what Darius Leonard does so well that Roquan Smith also does. It's that sideline to sideline speed, but also the ability to drop in zone coverage, especially on underneath routes. And you're gonna have play this cover 2 defense. It's gonna be middle of the field open. So that's where Roquan Smith is gonna be huge in that aspect. And he does have the ability to drop back in coverage. His best game coverage wise was against Cincinnati. Even take out the pick six, which will definitely boost up the grade. You watch all the other things he was doing in that game, and it really correlated to why that was his best game in coverage. So he does have an opportunity to take his game to a next level, specifically because this defense, it's going to revolve around a Roquan. Yes, the defensive line has to help him out with that, but Roquan Smith in this defense has the potential to, I'm not going to say quite replicate what Darius Leonard was doing because he honestly is an athletic freak in terms of turnovers, but the 100-plus-yard tackling games or seasons, the ability to be in the right place, the right time, that's what Roquan Smith has consistently done. And I think it'll, just repeat itself here in 2022.
I mean, there were games where it felt like he did get 100 tackles. I'll give you that.
Yeah, true.
But no, you mentioned like the turnovers, takeaways being the one area that he can still drastically maybe improve because it is something that, I mean, he's had an interception at least one every season. But, getting more forced fumbles or fumble recoveries, and heck, if you can have more multiple interception seasons, I think we'd both be happy for it. And I know you're drawing the comparison, with Leonard and Indy. I feel like if the defense is going to emphasize those turnovers more so than Roquan's ever been used to, I mean, there's a chance that this is an area of his game that he can make some headway. And if he does, those plays are the highlight plays, the ones that go on, I'll say it one more time, ESPN. And once that happens, then you get that national recognition, the buzz, the eyeballs, and then perhaps he won't fly under the radar any longer. Although I don't think he ever has here actually in Chicago. Like I said, we know what we have in Roquan. And yeah, I mean, that's why we don't even have to have a big conversation on him. Like, I have some more questions that pertain with him, but I don't know. Is there any other, I guess, frames of mind that we should have around number 58 this year? He's just so damn good. And, maybe we take it for granted to a degree, but I just expect good things. And I know that he just does everything well, super versatile. And he's just an overall good guy to have here on this defense.
Yeah, some other things I just want to mention about Roquan and where his game can maybe expand this season. In Matty Eberflus's defense, and going to give credit to Benjamin Solak from The Ringer, he had a great article about why Darius Leonard was so successful in Matt Eberflus' defense, they love to have the defensive line run those stunts. And what that does, it opens up the offensive line to second level pressures. We know Roquan Smith has blitzed here and there throughout his time in the NFL, but this could be a season too where we see more of that because of the defensive front that the Bears are going to run. And Darius Leonard was somebody that could get to the quarterback, was able to get some of those sacks. Now I think with this defense that the Bears are going to be running, I think you'll see a little bit more opportunities for Roquan Smith to also increase his numbers in that regard. He also had a sack in that game against Cincinnati. He came off, he looked like he was covering the slot, disguised it perfectly, and at the snap was able to go and get Joe Burrow. So you might see him just increase his production there. And the only other thing, to maybe if I have reservations, and again, going to those turnovers, and again, making those comparisons again, like Darius Leonard is listed at 6'2", 34 and 3/8 inch arms. So he's a rangier linebacker where Roquan's at 6'1" with 32-inch arms. Those, hey, 2 inches makes a difference there, Will. So when you're dropping back in coverage and you can play it perfectly, but yet it's just that little 2-inch grab where you're able to kind of go over the middle of the field and make that interception. Roquan doesn't have the physical attributes, but where he could make up for that is in speed. Going back to the combine, he ran a 4.5 Roquan. Darius Leonard was at 4.71. So Roquan knows this defense can get there quicker. Then, despite the lack of size, he's still capable of making those plays. But that's what makes a guy like Darius Leonard such an athletic freak, where he uses his ability to recognize offensive plays plus his size and range. He's able to get all these interceptions, able to force a fumble out. But Roquan is right there in that realm in terms of the ability to make plays, sideline to sideline speed. But I just also want to put that out there. If we don't see maybe those turnovers kind of happen, he's capable of it, but I can see why. Darius Leonard is also in that same draft, Will. Also in that
Yep.
same draft. So someone that has created those turnovers consistently, and we'll just have to see how Roquan really takes his defense and can obviously play in it.
So you're telling me at the end of the season, if they're still going through contract negotiations at that time, and maybe the turnover numbers aren't there, they'll use that as like a bargaining chip, and they're like, oh, well, Darius Leonard and Roquan's like, hey, my arms are 2 inches shorter, and that matters. I'm doing the best I can, but I can't grow my arms any longer. I just quit doing that. Maybe.
Maybe yeah. Nothing much you can do about that, but it's a key part, and it does help. 2 inches helps.
Nomad said, Roquan can get downhill.
Mhm.
And on blitzes a lot faster, than Leonard. And you mentioned the speed as well. I thought that was a good point to bring up. And I did look at this when we did our defensive rankings earlier this week, like how those linebackers were used. And you said they were, heavily being featured as part of like blitz packages. And between the Mike and the Will, because again, we'll discuss those positions here in this show too, and who we think will end up where. But no matter which position a linebacker was playing for the Colts, each average over 40 blitz attempts for the entire season. So expect to see, Roquan up around the line of scrimmage, shooting some gaps, going after quarterbacks, and some of those run blitzes too, to try to, burst through the line and make a play in the backfield, which we know he's highly capable of because he's a tackle for loss machine. All right, that does it for Roquan Smith. Let's go down to tier 2, which I'm going to call a starter and a question mark. And let's start with, the starter, and it's Nicholas Morrow. The Bears signed him pretty quickly, once free agency starts, with the intent of him, of course, being a starter in Chicago. He hasn't played in 2020. That ankle injury kept him out all of last season. But I mentioned this earlier this week. Like when he's healthy, he's another linebacker like Roquan that has like a variety of skills. Maybe not to the same exact degree, but he does have that versatility to his game, being effective both against the run, getting after quarterbacks off of blitzes. He had 3 sacks in 2020, and he's also very good in coverage. He had 9 PBUs in his last full season, 2020, which led all linebackers in the league, and that was despite only playing in 14 games this season. And of course, when you're a good coverage linebacker and you do all these things well, that's a must to be an effective backer in the NFL and today's world that we live in. So Nick, I just want to know, like, based off everything that you've seen in OTAs, what you heard from him and some of those interviews up in Halas Hall, like, do you believe that Nicholas Morrow still has, and I quote, like, can he be an effective player for the Bears this season?
I think he can be. I think he fits with this scheme, and playing alongside Roquan Smith's definitely going to help a Nicholas Morrow who hasn't played on next to a guy of that caliber. But you see his intangibles, the speed, being a former safety in college, and then being converted to that linebacker position that he is now. It translates. Those 9 passes defended, there's a reason for that. And even you go back, 2020 was his breakout season, but 2019 he had 73 total tackles, 4 passes
Mhm.
defended. So he was kind of building this consistency of being a guy that was in the right position at the right time and could make the play. And obviously 2021 was unfortunate for him with that season-ending ankle injury, but I think Morrow can be a good complement to a Roquan Smith. And he was the guy that had the headset on. So, and I don't know if that's going to be what comes in this season. If he's going to be the one calling plays, that would indicate he's the mic. But how the coaches have been saying, how even Morrow was saying, it's like they're interchangeable. Like any given, maybe a personnel decision on the offense could indicate where Morrow will line up or where Roquan Smith will line up. So I'm not too worried about who is the status of a Mike, a Will, and how what their given responsibilities are in any given play. But I think he does have the skill set to do it. It's just he's a season removed from football. Let's see how he can get acquainted back into it and see it ultimately happen in games.
Right. How much rust has accumulated and how quickly can he knock it off? Or some of my questions heading into training camp when it comes to, Nicholas Morrow here. And you mentioned one of his best attributes, and that's speed. Both of the Bears starting at, inside linebackers here, they can fly. Like they really can. And I think it's that blend of speed and the versatility that each have gives me hope that they can be a successful tandem in Chicago this year. And you said it, it's interchangeable. Will, who's Mike? Does it matter? Like, even if someone's playing Will, like say they put Morrow over at Will, he can still have the headset on. Like he doesn't have to be lined up and quote Mike to be the guy receiving the calls, getting guys in place. And I know Morrow has experience in this defense as well, so that's probably why, because he doesn't have as big as a learning curve than Roquan does. And even though I say, Roquan has a learning curve, he's a player that doesn't bother me. Like I expect him to be a master of this defense before camp breaks without question. But do you have a guess at who's going to end up at Will, who's going to end up at Mike? And then afterwards, like at the end of the day, does it even matter?
Prediction: I think it will be Morrow as the quote unquote Mike, Roquan as the Will. And does it matter? Nope, it doesn't. It really doesn't matter in terms of who's what in this defense. Because again, on any given play, like Nicholas Morrow, I asked him the question, like, what does that matter? He's like, well, again, the personnel could change what we do. And if I'm Mike one play and they split out a tie down out wide, our responsibilities can change. So I don't think it will matter. It's just everyone just needs to be on the same page. Like Roquan and Nicholas Morrow cannot have any mental lapses. Like, oh, I thought you were quote unquote Will, and so you're taking the responsibilities of the same guy. That's where it can become an issue. But as long as you're kind of hammering that out throughout the OTAs, the mini camps, and obviously training camp, I think the Bears will be just fine.
And I think that's perhaps one of the bigger challenges for this duo will be the communication. Roquan Smith has had 4 years, partnering with Danny Trevathan, and of course with Trevathan's health and injury history, there were other players kind of thrown in as well. But primarily, like that was the tandem, that was the duo that was in Chicago. Now he has a new partner with a new defense and different verbiage and terminology and different responsibilities. So it's going to take some time to kind of iron that out, get on the same page, because ideally you want them almost in sync. Like they can almost give each
Mhm.
other a look and they know what the other person's thinking. They don't have to even be verbal at times, but making sure they get the right checks in place, communicating effectively. Like to me, that may be the biggest challenge that they have as a tandem together on top of Morrow just knocking off that general rust. Anything else on either Morrow or Morrow with Roquan in general? We've been talking about Wills and Nicholas's, I think, for a good chunk here.
Yeah, we have. I didn't even realize that until you mentioned it. But no, I think we have it covered. We know those two guys, or we definitely know Roquan. We know what Nicholas Morrow can be, and then this is where the discussion of linebackers gets murky and interesting at the same time.
Yeah, this whole conversation's been interesting, murky. I will definitely give you that, Nick. So, like I said, this year is called a starter and a question mark. So my quote question mark is Matt Adams. Like the off the field thing, I get to like that's going to be part of this equation. I feel like if the Bears were going to do anything, it would have been done. So I expect him to be here once camp opens, and the off the field issue, which was a misdemeanor, they'll figure it out. And at the end of the day, like I'm just going to let it be what it's going to be, and we'll go from there. But for Matt Adams, the Bears signed him in the hope that he could potentially win the starting strong side backer position. Sam, if we want to throw another name out there, all while being a true special teams ace in Chicago. Adams was Pro Football Focus's 2021 NFL All-Pro team. Like, he made that as the best special teams player that wasn't like a punter or kicker in the entire NFL last season, because he just has so much value and experience, and he plays well on kick return, kick coverage, punt return, punt coverage, field goal block units. He's everywhere when it comes to special teams, and he also has a lot of experience in this defense coming from Indianapolis. And even though he does have the experience, I don't think he's a lock to become the Sam backer. There are some young players that are kind of chomping at the bit to do so. But Nick, I want to know what you think. Are there some reasons why, Adams can and perhaps can or won't win this job?
Well, why he can win this job is he's been the first player in the starting defense at the Sam position. As you try to swat that fly away, Will.
It's been bothering me for
I
like
saw
20
it
minutes
earlier.
now.
Earlier the podcast, like, come here,
I'm
come here.
trying to tell the kid, like, when you're outside, close the door, and then I always walk and the door is like cracked open. I'm like, oh.
I just want to one day just, and then just kind of throw the fly off screen. But to answer your question with Matthew Adams, like, he has been the one consistently, I would say, with the first team when they go to that traditional 4-3 defense. He is the third linebacker on the field, and so having that familiarity with being in Indianapolis the past 4 seasons with Eberflus, that's gonna help. Eberflus knows what he's about. He's a core special teamer. He knows the work he puts into it. And honestly, the Sam linebacker, as it was told by Eberflus, is not going to be as prominent. It's not going to be on the field as much. Most likely, you're going to go into a dime over it, unless it is a heavy run situation. Then you'll kind of see the Sam be out there. But right now, it's been Matthew Adams. I don't know how this arrest and charge with the misdemeanor affects things, but Matt Eberflus, if anybody, knows what he's about, and I don't think that's a reflection of who Matthew Adams is. Again, he was he was arrested and charged with a firearm possession. So again, I don't, if something were to have been like finalized, I think it would have happened already. But I think the Bears know who he is, especially Eberflus.
Yeah, and I mean, I think firearms are a big thing right now in terms of like just people's attention. I don't know what it was, perhaps, but he had a license for it. He wasn't using it like in any way, just had it in his car, and he just let the officer know, like, hey, I have it. But the license wasn't for Illinois yet. And he did. He
Mm-hmm.
came from the Colts. And so I don't know where the license was, but it could have been Indiana. And it's just one of those things like, I'm going to say it happens. Like, so you move from state to state, you forget to update your driver's license. And then, that's a whole bureaucracy issue as well. So I'm going to let the Bears figure this one out. But as of right now, he's on this team, and I expect the Bears to want to keep him around just due to the value that he does provide on the field. But I mean, that's really all I got from him. I know he's a really good special teamer. He'd probably be solid at Sam. He's a bigger linebacker, not as fast, but he's strong, and he can go up there and be effective against the run. And like you said, it's not going to be a big part of this defense. I would be very surprised if whoever plays Sam, or just the Sam position in general, sees the field more than a third of the snaps all season long. Like, if it's more than 33%, I think I would be, pretty surprised. So it's still a minor role, but still an important one on some, heavier run down situations that, and of course you don't want to give up those yards. You want someone that can be stout there as well. All right. So up next, we're going to get to tier 3, and we're going to do some season predictions as well. But before we do, I just want to let you know, like, if you enjoy CHGO, one way that you can help us continue to grow is to download the PointsBet app and use that code CHGO when you sign up. Not only are you going to get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000, but if you make a $50 or more first-time deposit, you receive a free CHGO membership, which unlocks all of our web content. You'll even get a free shirt of your choice from the CHGO locker. And if you have any questions, email pointsbet@allchgo.com, and we will help you out. And in case you missed it, online sign up is now available in Illinois. You can actually download the PointsBet app right now and register your account from start to finish, all from your phone. You'll be signing up with the fastest sportsbook, and it's easier than ever, so you can start living your bet life in seconds. So what are you waiting for? Once the game starts, don't just bet, live your bet life with PointsBet. Gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. All right, here we go, Nick. Final portion of our show. We have tier 3 to get to, which I'm lumping everyone in. So they are officially dubbed as the rest. We have Joe Thomas. He's an 8th-year veteran. He's 30 years old. He's bounced around between Green Bay, Dallas, Houston, and Baltimore last year. 218 career tackles since joining the league in 2015. He's played in 50% of special team snaps wherever he's been, all but 2 seasons. And in those 2 years, it's because he played over 50% of the defensive snaps. Had to take on a larger role there. So then he bounced off his special teams role and lost a little bit of that. But he also has experience in a very similar defense. He played under Rod Marinelli, someone that Coach Eberflus looks up to as a mentor. Well, Rod is a mentor to Matt. I just want to make sure I got that one clear. The other way around may not make too much sense. Then you have Noah Dawkins, a 2-year veteran, mostly a practice squad player since joining the league in 2019. Caleb Johnson, we know him. We saw him last year, an undrafted free agent that stayed on with the Bears last season to be a very core special teams member, playing in about 70% of those snaps. Someone that really just came out of nowhere in camp last year. Then you have Jack Sanborn, the undrafted free agent out of Wisconsin, Christian Albright, the undrafted free agent out of Ball State, and CJ Avery, the UDFA out of Louisville. So we all know, Adam's not here. And if he was, he let us know that his eyes are just going to be glued on Jack Sanborn for all of training camp. But out of this group, is that where you would lean as well, Nick? Or is there someone else that you're looking at? Obviously, Sanborn looks like he has potential to get himself into the conversation to compete for that Sam spot in camp. I just want to know, where's your mind? Because I look at this and now I get worried about the depth at this position.
Yeah, because the quality of players, obviously, when you're at this point in any roster, is going to dip down. But yes, it would be like a Sanborn who I think has made a few plays here and there with the third team defense when we were able to check him out. Adam, made clear that when we were watching, like he was the one who was watching him, UW Madison. But Joe Thomas, he does have a lot of experience, Will, and I look at what he did last season. He played for Houston and then went to Baltimore, had 109 snaps in Houston on special teams. And I think what we're looking for here at this point of the roster, who are those linebackers that could be key contributors on the special teams aspect? And I look at a guy like Joe Thomas, a veteran. I look at a guy like Jack Sanborn and Caleb Johnson even. That's where you really find the value if you have to dig this deep. And again, one injury can really realistically push everybody up. That's what obviously happens. But this point, you're looking for core special teamers who you can consistently rely on, will just run down their lanes and make the plays that you want them to make in that phase. But nobody that has that crazy upside. If anybody, like again, for Adam's sake, like Jack Sanborn, he just seems like a guy that makes a lot of tackles. An Illinois native as well, where he went to Lake Zurich High School from Deer Park. So obviously familiar with the Chicago Bears, but a lot of these guys, I look at special teams. That's how they will make an impact in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, that's really where we're at right now. And when you look at who's on this list, Caleb Johnson is a proven effective special teams player. Same thing with Matthew Adams. Same thing for Joe Thomas, as I've mentioned. So there are people there that fit exactly what you were saying there, Nick. And out of this group, I think, Jack, it will be the one for me as well. He's just such a sound linebacker. Like he has those fundamentals down. He's just not an elite athlete. Like he doesn't have that top end speed like Roquan or Nicholas Morrow. He's not that rangy player in space, but he is a little bit of a bigger body. He can be that thumper, that downhill thumper that's attacking the run. And I think, when he's reading or acting against a run, he's done that well in Wisconsin. That should translate over. And that's why he could, I think, if he makes some of those plays that you mentioned, he's already doing in OTAs, also in training camp with more people in attendance, that's when he gets some buzz generated, and perhaps that's his shot. Again, it was this time last year when we were going through the similar list, and we're like, and they have Caleb Johnson, and that's all we said about him. That's all we really knew, and then he
Mm-hmm.
just came out of nowhere, and so it happens. And so I just want to at least give Jack a window of opportunity here without saying like, oh, there's no shot. Like there's a legitimate chance that he can do that. And that's one thing that I'm excited to go see in training camp. All right, Nick, we've talked about all the linebackers now on this roster. I want to know who makes the team. I looked at Indianapolis. They kept 6 linebackers
Mm-hmm.
on their roster last year. Are you going to go with that 6 as like a template, or are you changing it up?
I'm going with it as a template, a benchmark, if you will, for what maybe the Bears will do this season with their linebackers. So my six are Roquan Smith, Nicholas Morrow, Matthew Adams, Joe Thomas. I do have Jack Sanborn making it, and also the last one being Caleb Johnson as the six linebackers that will round out this list. And again, like the Colts in 2021, also like you said, had six, and those six linebackers, they also had six linebackers with over 100 special team snaps. Two guys had 350 or more, two players with 200 or more. So that's they find a lot of special teams contributors through that linebacker position, specifically the bottom end guys.
Yeah, I have the same exact six as you. I didn't think this would be one where we're going super askew. I really didn't think you're like, all right, CJ Avery, Christian Albright are locks to make this team. I'm excited to see more about them at camp, and perhaps
Hmm.
they can show why they should stick around as like a practice squad development type of player. And there's a lot of value there, and you never know if an injury happens, who's that next man up to get activated to the roster, and then they become that special teams contributor as well. So they're definitely players to keep an eye on too at camp. But yeah, same six as you. I don't think it surprises all too many people. Maybe the Joe Thomas one, just because it's a name that I don't think a lot of Bears fans know of right now. But when you look into him, his experience, no matter where he's gone, he's made the team. Like I know he's bounced around throughout his career, but he's made final rosters and he's been an effective special teams player no matter where he's gone. And I think that's exactly what the Bears are looking to get out of him too, for a very minimal contract and just have someone there to hold down that spot. All right, Nick, let's play some over under and do some predictions for this season. You ready?
Let's talk.
You were just kind of doing some typies, and I was like, maybe you're researching something. No.
Like I have the YouTube stream actually right
Oh,
next to me, so I'll type in there in the chat and stuff. But yeah, it's just over to the left on the new monitor I got, which is awesome. I can have like four mini screens that are all legit. Like, can actually see. They're not like so small that you can't see anything. It's like, hey, this is legit. This is like a little tablet on each side. So it's been great so far.
how big's that monitor?
This is a 32-inch curved.
All
I'm
right.
like, damn, okay, this works. I should have had this way long ago. The little one, the little monitor's over to my right here. I don't even know how big that one is, but inches matter.
I was gonna say the inches come up mattering yet again in today's episode. All right, so over under have a handful of these for us today. Let's start off with Roquan. 169 and a half total tackles for Roquan Smith. 163 last year. Does he go over 169 and a half or under it?
169. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's a lot of tackles there, Will. I think I'll say over. I'll go 171. But man, that seems really high though. Seems really high. So maybe I'm too optimistic on what Roquan can do in year one in this defense, but I'll go over.
Okay, I like it. I'm gonna just say slightly under, just because he has Morrow, who should also assist getting some of these numbers. And on top of that as well, like I said, this is a big number, and ideally this defensive line is making some plays in front of him as well. But they are going to be asking Roquan to be all over the field and knows the football, just finding it. So I think there's a chance that he could easily get over 170 because again, he's only at 163 last year. And well,
Here's
the
a
only other caveat the
Go ahead,
defense should
Will.
be on the field less, hopefully. Yeah, that's what you're
Yeah.
thinking.
Well, there were two games last season where they had 81 defensive snaps. It was the game against Cleveland and the game against Baltimore. So the defense was on the field for a majority of the game. I don't think that will be the case this season where the offense is completely non-existent. So maybe it will be less because there will be less opportunities for the defense, which is good. Rest is good.
Yeah, it's not about the number of tackles. It's about just making the plays that you're supposed to make. And if the defense is on the field as much, that means your offense is, and that's not a bad problem to have. All right, 16.5 PBUs for Roquan and Nicholas Morrow combined. Over under 16 and a half.
Seems like a lot. I know Nicholas Morrow had the 9 in 2020.
And then Roquan had
Um
like 12. So that's giving you over 21 right there. And I'm only setting at 16 and a half.
yeah, you are. I'll go under on the 16 and a half for the PBUs. Not that these linebackers won't be in position. Just going to go under in this category.
Okay, I'm going to say over. I'm going to say there's going to be a lot of hands on balls on this defense in general, and the linebackers are going to be a big part of it. And I've mentioned, like, they're both really good linebackers in coverage. They can make plays on the football, and they've both proven they can get a lot of pass breakups. Although, if we can turn more of those into interceptions, I'm not going to complain, but I'm going to give it an over, and the middle of the field officially becomes a no-fly zone in Chicago, and I'm happy about that. All right, 19.5 tackles for loss for Roquan and Nicholas Morrow combined.
Well, you talked about there's probably going to be more opportunities for these linebackers to blitz, be in the backfield, especially with the stunting that the defensive line will do. So I'm going to go over 19 and a half and put it at 25.
All right, I'm going to go over as well. I'll say 22, just to be slightly more modest. And last but not least, 2.5 interceptions for all linebackers combined this season. What do you got?
Oh man, Roquan's got what, one each? Is it one each season or is
He's had
that
one each season, but 1 year, maybe it was 2018, he had two.
okay? I mean, I think their defenses are going to want to attack the middle of the field, or try to, especially given what the Bears may have on the outside. What was the number at again, Will, for the over
Yep,
under
2.5.
two
And
and a
again,
half?
Sam Backer counts here if that floats your fancy to help you sway your decision. No?
Nah,
Okay.
not the same. We'll go over. We'll put it at 3. Yeah, we'll put it at 3 for the over on the interceptions.
All right. I'm going to say over as well, just to be well optimistic. And I think it's quite possible. I think Roquan could get three himself. Like, that's really within their own possibility. And if Morrow can get one or two, icing on the cake. All right, we're going to move from over under to some true or false. Nick, true or false? Roquan Smith gets his extension in Chicago after the season.
Ooh, after the season. Will it happen before? No, I don't know if that
Mm.
discussion's even happening. He doesn't have an agent too. I don't think that helps him in his discussion to get that contract. But I'm gonna go true. The Bears, they're gonna have money, and money will be well spent if you extend Roquan Smith to be a part of this team.
Yep. He better be around. If not, then like what are they actually doing here? I would sour on Ryan Poles
Question.
quickly if for
Yeah.
some reason, yeah, that he's like, we don't want Roquan around. Like, come on now. True or false? Roquan gets either All Pro or Pro Bowl honors for the first time this season. I ask this like every year, and I feel like we're like, true, it's easy, it's gonna happen, but yet again, it's like a copy and paste for me. What do we got? True or false?
He gets those second team all pros. He hasn't gotten the first team. And again, it is
The first
because
team's all I'm counting.
yeah, it's like it's because he's on the Bears. It really is. I mean, and they're just never and really they're just not competitive once it gets later in the season. And that could be the case this season, Will. I'm gonna say false. He does not get either one this year, and that's not a discredit to Roquan. It's honestly just how the whole system works.
I asked a question earlier about Will or Mike. Does it even matter?
No.
Exactly. It's just a label. It doesn't change what type of player he is here in Chicago, although I'm sure he would personally like to start getting some of those accolades like underneath his belt. So when time passes and people look back at his career, it'll be like 3-time Pro Bowler, multiple time All Pro because people quickly glance. So I'm sure he wants to get some of that under his belt too. True or false? Nicholas Morrow shows enough to sign another contract with the Bears after his 1-year deal expires.
Oh, it's very similar to the what Thomas Graham question that you had yesterday. Almost like
Mm-hmm.
if he plays well enough. So Nicholas Morrow, I'll go true there. I think he's gonna again have that resurgent year that he didn't have in 2021 because he had some consistent years building off of each other. So I'll go true, and I don't think it's gonna be very a lucrative deal where the Bears are gonna want to say no unless another team sees what he did this season. Is like we'll pay you more, but I think it'll be true.
I do too. Like you said, knock off the rust, get back to what we saw in 2020. And if he shows he's a fit, he's 27 currently, if I remember correctly. He's high 20s, and I think he has a couple more years before he hits that 3-0. So they could sign him to like a 2-year deal
Hmm.
if he proves to be someone that they have confidence in this defense for a couple of years. And I think he can prove that. So I'm going to say true as well. I just have hope that we don't have to all right, next offseason, let's find another linebacker yet again. And, it almost would turn into the safety position under the previous
Yeah.
regime. Like, all right, 1-year deals. Haha, Clinton Dix, Travis Gibson again. Uh, Jeez. All right. Last
So
true or
real quickly,
false.
Will,
Yeah,
looks like
hit me up.
Nicholas Morrow, July 10th was his birthday. So I think did he just turn 27? July 10th, 1995. So he
Hmm.
what 27? Yeah. So still in prime time of his career, but again, what Jailbreak said in the comments, Morrow has to stay healthy. He definitely does.
I can't call 27 old. My wife turned 27 this year in June. So
I'm
if I did
27.
that, you're no, I'm kidding. She was run down here like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah, yeah.
I get in trouble rather quickly. All right, fill in the blank, Nick. If there is one concern to have with this unit heading into the season, it is blank.
I mean, it's the depth. If one of these guys goes down, like let's be realistic about this. If someone else has to come up and play Roquan's position, then you make Morrow that guy. Then who's going to be that next step? Is it a Joe Thomas who has experience? Is it going to be a Matthew Adams who's primarily a special teamer? It's depth, and if anything goes wrong in terms of injuries, the Bears will have a problem at that position.
Zach agrees with you. I agree with you. It's what I put in my notes. Fill in the blank. The best word to describe Roquan and Nicholas Morrow, the tandem heading into the season. Like, what's the one word that describes that duo?
Fast.
Yep, I put speed. A little
Okay.
different,
Yeah.
but exactly the same. And
Yes.
then usually, like for this section, I will do like, blank will, blah, 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 like lead the team or whatever, whenever. Here, it's every time it would have been Roquan Smith. So I just
Hmm.
decided to omit those. Like, is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair, Will. That's fair.
Okay. Like I could have came up with one on the spot, but I'm like, it's just gonna be Roquan, Roquan. All right.
Roquan.
Roquan. All right. Bold predictions. What do you have in store for us? What is do you want me to go first actually?
I mean, I have one right. Okay, so when you asked me yesterday, that was on the spot because you know me, always forgetting. But I thought about this one, was really just trying to think what would be good. And my bold, I'll go with mine. Well, Roquan Smith, like we talked about, he has one forced fumble in his career, his entire career, 4 years with the Bears. Making that comparison again, Darius Leonard, same draft, 36 overall in 2018, has 17 forced fumbles. That's an outrageous number. Leonard had 8 last season, and he also had 4 as a rookie. I think Roquan Smith, he has all the intangibles too. He's always around the ball carrier, makes a lot of tackles. Now that emphasis on creating turnovers has been evident in all the camps, the practices. So Roquan will get 6 forced fumbles this season.
Damn. If he does that, then he's gonna get some of those accolades that he's been
Yes.
eluding him so far throughout his career. I have 3 bold predictions and I couldn't decide. So I'm just going to ramble them. You can tell me which one you like. 20 tackles for loss for Roquan Smith alone. 18
Oh,
was his career high. Why can't he beat out his best season in a defense that should allow him to flow to the ball even more effectively? I also have 3 interceptions this year for Roquan. Like I said, his career best in a single season's 2. Why not have a slight uptick? And then this one, if you want to go bold, Nicholas Morrow has over 100 combined tackles this season.
wow. I think that one might be the most bold with the Nicholas Morrow. But no, they're all great. And if any of these happens, any of them, I mean, the Bears are looking pretty good at their interior linebacker spots. But I like the Nicholas Morrow one.
Not bad for a team that only has 2 or 3, players that can start elsewhere in the league. If that ends up being the case. All right, Nick. Last thing we need to do is hand out our confidence meters for linebacker. Again, a confidence meter is a scale of 1 to 10, just how confident we are in this position heading into the year. Where are you at? I know yesterday we're hovering around like 7.5s. Are you around the same? Because I kept finding myself nearly in the same boat.
Yeah, and I may have been maybe too bullish on the secondary yesterday. So I'm like, all right, Nick, check yourself here with the linebackers. I'm at like a 7.3. We know exactly who Roquan Smith is and what he will do in this defense. Nicholas Morrow and the potential, then everybody else. But we just need to see that tandem work out. And if the defensive line can do its job, it's going to free up these linebackers to play productive and get those stats that they're definitely capable of. I'm going to 7.3, and Roquan Smith definitely elevates that confidence I have in him. Nicholas Morrow needs to show that that year removed from football isn't going to impact him too much, but I like that tandem, and it goes back to that one word, speed, and just being fast, of why they can be a good duo together.
100%. I'm at a 7.66. I got there. I did math, your favorite subject here today.
Oh yeah.
I did Roquan. I gave him a 10, like no question about it. Like 10 out of 10, confident in Roquan. Nicholas Morrow, maybe slightly generous, but I gave him a 7.5. And then depth, again, maybe slightly generous, but a 5.5. And then that average came out to 7.66. And alas, there we are for my number. And I think relatively it's very similar to yours. And I don't want to kind of rehash everything. That's what this whole episode's been about. We've already said our thoughts on all of these guys for sure. And I think overall, when you look at the starters, you're feeling all right. It's hard not to when you have Roquan out there. And outside of that, you got to see what it is. And
Hmm.
we're going to get to the same spot in terms of like questioning the depth. I feel like for more positions than not this year, just due to the cautious approach that Ryan Poles is kind of taking throughout this retool rebuild era that the Bears are currently in. All right. I think that does it, Nick. Any last thoughts for the week before we close shop?
No, everyone enjoy their weekend. Thank you for tuning in to each of the episodes this week. And, Will and I will be back next week, kind of continuing our countdown to camp series and previewing more players, more positions. So make sure you tune in and check those out all next week.
There you go, Nick. That was awesome. I liked it.